Alright guys, UFC 292 is this weekend. Aljamain Sterling is main eventing again, which is kind of crazy when you think about the weight class that he is in and how often those boys get to main event. The fact that he's doing it again is really impressive, but there are so many weird questions and emotions going into this weekend. Not whether or not Aljamain Sterling is going to win, because let's just get this out of the way right now. I actually think Aljamain Sterling is the clear winner at the end of the day here. I think he's fine on the feet against Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley is definitely tricky and rangy and has great movement, but I think Aljo is good enough to hold his own there. I don't think we've ever seen a reason to question Aljo's chin. And it's MMA, like one overswing, one wrong movement, and Aljo is going to be bang, blasting double legs, taking Sean O'Malley down. He's going to backpack him, he's going to ride him, and that's just going to be the end of Sean O'Malley, because even though we just saw him do really well in a grappling match, Sean O'Malley this is, he's not as good as Aljo on the ground. And yeah, every MMA fight starts on the feet, but it doesn't take much for Aljo to get you down there. They're not the questions that come up this weekend. Let's just walk this back a bit, because I have a real love-hate relationship with Aljamain Sterling. The guy in interviews is funny, charismatic, he's a good bloke, but his career as a champion, his championship run in the UFC has been one of the most frustrating experiences as a UFC fan ever. The way that he won the title, to me, was disgusting. It was soccer player-esque. I hate seeing that kind of stuff in our sport, because it's meant to be a sport of raw violence, testosterone, like men going to war. And you don't get to win a title that way. It was pathetic, to be honest. Then, of course, his second fight against Petr Yan. Jan's entire team was pulled from him in the last moment. Like, Jan went into the octagon that day completely unprepared and put on the back foot here. Then, of course, you got the TJ Dillashaw fight, where we as fans were robbed. And I've said this on multiple videos. Why is there not a class action lawsuit from UFC gamblers, DraftKings, against the UFC? Like, there's just the UFC fans. Why are you not getting class action lawsuit together? Because the UFC must have known that TJ Dillashaw was going into that fight compromised, and they let that fight out. To me, the UFC almost fixed that fight. That's how bad that was. And when you actually bring people's money into it, that's just completely unacceptable. So to me, we got robbed on that one. And then moving forward, you've got Aljo versus Henry Cejudo, which, like, I mean, if it wasn't for a judge scoring round 5 wrong, Aljo loses that fight. So you've got this fun, charismatic dude, but his championship run has been bullshit. It's been bullshit. And now the UFC media are on this hype train. We're now cycling into the new narrative that he is just the greatest bantamweight of all time. He's one of the GOATs of bantam, and it's like, he's good. Don't get me wrong, but we just stack up these wins, and then you have numbers. You're not really looking at people's careers. And when you look at Aljo's championship run, it sucks. It sucks, and it sucks to watch, and it sucks to be a fan of. And I think it shows something, because in Aljo's last fight, he was fighting at home, and the fans were booing him as he walked out in his home state. And that is embarrassing. That's embarrassing as a champion. You don't want to see that. Then the UFC sort of shoves Sean O'Malley in there, and you're seeing that the UFC were doing this quick turnaround. Aljo's spoken about how the weight cut is getting harder and harder. And, you know, even a UFC champion, especially a UFC champion, what am I saying? Especially a UFC champion after a title fight, and after the kind of title fight that he had against Henry Cejudo not long ago, you need time to recover. And the UFC were very quick to be like, no, you're going in there against Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley is getting the Israel Adesanya treatment. He's getting all the leg ups that you can get. So you're getting back in there. And all of a sudden, Aljo is the guy that is being sort of wrecked on this deal. You know, the UFC know that he's probably not the best at selling pay-per-views, at least not compared to Sean O'Malley, who is apparently a star. And again, it's sort of like the Israel Adesanya thing, where the UFC sees someone who is marketable and they'll tell you that he's a star. Like, Sean O'Malley is a star because we're telling you he's a star. Israel Adesanya is a star because we're going to tell you he's a star. Even though the fans don't really like him that much, you go to any post from Israel Adesanya and it's all just Chinese champion, leg kick from range, why are you touching your dog? All these sort of things are in there. Yet the UFC keep claiming that Israel Adesanya is some sort of pay-per-view superstar, even though they stack all the pay-per-views that he's on. That's fine. I think the same thing is happening with Sean O'Malley. People keep saying Sean O'Malley is some sort of superstar of MMA, like he's all, I don't know, what is this, a Gen Z thing? Like all the kids love him? Well, the kids aren't buying pay-per-views, mate. They know where the links are, okay? They keep saying he's some sort of a star. Anytime there is a Sean O'Malley press conference, he's horrible on a mic. Horrible on a mic. Like, I don't know. I don't watch Sean O'Malley's podcast. I don't see the things that Sean O'Malley does unless I'm seeing him through the UFC media, which is like on Embedded or at the post-fight press conferences or the pre-fight press conferences. And all of that stuff, all I see is a kid who dyes his hair like a clown, and apparently that makes him a superstar. I don't know. So this kid who dyes his hair like a clown and we get told that he's a superstar, he's getting the leg up from the UFC. And now I find myself actually backing Aljo, this dude who I have hated his career of and wanted to see him in a real fight. All of a sudden, I feel myself being drawn to Aljo and hoping to see that Aljo gets another win. And when that does happen, all that I am praying for is that we do not see another fluke Aljo win. We don't see Sean O'Malley going in there compromised, which it looks like he isn't. He looks very healthy. We see Sean O'Malley go in there with all of his coaches, which I think he will be. Since he's American, he's not going to have any visa issues. Sean O'Malley puts up a good fight and Aljo beats him clearly, where we don't need any fiddly judging to get Aljo the win. If we see a good, clean win from Aljo over Sean O'Malley, I'll forgive all of his past performances. I'm a very fickle UFC fan. That's okay. It must just be because Sean O'Malley rubs me the wrong way, and Aljo is just, it's almost like his career, which has been such a fluke, hasn't been his fault. And if he gets a good, clean win, then I'm going to love that moment. And then if he gives up his title to go and chase my boy Volkanovski, rather than going for champ, if he's just going to leave the title on the table for Merab to go and get it, I'm going to have a real level of respect for that, because what UFC fighter wouldn't want the opportunity to call themselves champ? And if Aljo just gets a win and walks away from that and says, you know, I'm not making the weight cut anymore. I'm never going to defend this belt. I'm leaving this belt here. And then goes up and challenges Volkanovski, one of the greatest UFC fighters of all time, and does it in a way where he doesn't hold up another division. Again, I'm going to have an incredible amount of respect for Aljo. I don't think he's going to beat Volkanovski. I'm not going to be rooting for him against Volkanovski. Volkanovski's my boy. But if he does get the win and he does call out Volk, it's going to be one of those fights where in my heart, I'm happy to see it happen and I'm just happy to enjoy the fight. Whereas this is one of those fights where I'm wondering if Aljo is going to get cheered when he walks out, because I don't know if he's still the heel here. I don't know how he looks in the fans' eyes. Usually when he walks out, I'm looking for him to lose. But this weekend, I'm going to be rooting for Aljo. I want him to win. I think he has the skill to win. I think he's going to win. But guys, you let me know down in the comments. Do you think the fans are going to boo him when he walks out, or do you think he's going to get the cheer? And who do you think is going to win? Do you think Sean O'Malley is going to have the kickboxing to pull it off? Or do you think that we're going to see some wrestling and grappling actually get the win here? And you're going to need to be a complete MMA fighter if you are going to beat one of the greatest bantamweights of all time. Let me know down in the comments, guys. And if you've been enjoying these videos, maybe consider subscribing. I'll see you all in the next one.